Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to learn about HTML table borders. Okay, we are going to learn about HTML table borders. One of the most important and visually impactful parts of working with HTML tables. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to add borders to your tables, how to style them, how to round them, how to collapse them, and much more. So make sure you watch this video till the very end because every single concept is going to be explained step by step. Let's get started. So first of all, what exactly are borders in HTML tables? When you create a table in HTML, by default, the table has no, let me write here, no visible borders. Okay, it's just plain rows and columns with no lines around them. So borders are the lines or outlines that appear around the table cells, rows, and the table itself. HTML tables can have borders of different styles, different sizes, and different colors, and we control all of them using CSS. Okay. Now, in the old days, people used to use an HTML attribute called border directly inside the table tag. Okay, so let me show you how they use this. So they use like a table, then you use the border as the property, and they set it to 1. Okay, and then they close this tag. But today, this method is outdated and not recommended. The modern and correct way is to use CSS to style your table borders. So this is what we are going to focus on today. Before we jump into the borders, let me quickly remind you of the basic structure of an HTML table so we are all on the same page. Okay, so let me write here the table tag, then we use the tr table row, and then we use the th table heading, and here we need first name as the heading. Then what we need here, the last name. Okay, and then we need age. Okay, so here I'm gonna write here table row, another row, and I'm gonna write here the table data for John. Okay, so the last name is Doe and the age is 25. Now let me write here the table data for Jane, Jane Smith, and the age is 30. So here as you can see, the table, okay, is the main table tag, and tr means table row, and th means table header. It's bold and centered by default. Okay, so here td means table data. These are your regular cells right now. Okay, so if you run this in browser, you will see the data but no borders at all. Okay, so let's fix that. To add a border to your table, you use CSS. Understand? So if I use here, let me show you how you can use CSS. So this property, the property we use is called border. Okay, let me show you how. So here we need the style tag, and we are going to cover here table, table heading, and table data, and I'm gonna use here border as the property, and I'm gonna set it to 1px. Then we need the solid black. Okay, so let me explain this line by line. We are targeting table. Okay, we are targeting three elements, as you can see: table, table header, and table data, all at the same time. We set border to 1px, it's solid black. Okay, so 1px means the border is 1 pixel thick. Okay, solid means if you use the solid means the border style is a solid straight line. It's not dotted, it's not dashed. Okay, so here we use the black. So black is the color of the border. Now when you run this, you will see borders around the entire table, as you can see in the preview tab, and around each individual cell. But you will also notice something. The borders look doubled, as you can see. Okay, so there is a gap between the outer table border and the inner cell borders. And understand? So that's because by default HTML tables have something called separate borders. Okay, let's fix that next. To remove that double border effect, as you can see in the preview tab, and make it look like one single clean border, we use a CSS property called border collapse. So what we need the value, and let me write here. So here we need the table, and we are going to cover the table. I'm going to set it to border collapse. Okay, so I'm going to set it to collapse. If you use this, as you can see, the border collapse is set to collapse property, tells the browser to merge the borders of adjacent cells into a single border. Now instead of two separate lines, you get one clean professional looking line between each cell. This is the most commonly used border style in HTML tables, and you will see it in almost every real world project. Now let's talk about border width. How thick or thin the border line is. You can make your border thicker by increasing the pixel value. Understand? So if you set it to, for example, 3px, okay, so if you set it here, 3px means the border is 3 pixels thick, noticeably thicker than before. Okay, you can use any value, 1px for thin, 3px for medium, 5px for thick, or even more depending on your design needs. Understand? Okay, so you can also change the color of your border. Instead of black, you can use any color, a color name, a hex code, or an RGB value. You can set it to, for example, if you use here a hash and you use 4CA F50. So here in this way our border color has been changed. Okay, the hash for CAF50 is actually a nice shade of green. Okay, so you can use any color that fits your website's design. Okay, the border style controls the appearance or pattern of the border line. The solid value gives a straight continuous line, but there are many other styles too. Okay, so if I use here, for example, if I don't use the style, and I'm gonna use here the border, let me write here the border style. Okay, this value, and I'm gonna set it to, for example, solid. So in this way the border lines are solid. And if I use here dashed, as you can see, the dashed effect. And if I use here, for example, dotted, so you can see the dotted effect. And if you use here, for example, double, then you can check the double effect. Okay, so if you use, for example, groove, then you can check the groove effect. Let me write here, for groove effect, then you can check the groove effect in the preview tab. And if you use, for example, ridge, okay, so ridge effect, you can also check this in the preview tab. And if you use, for example, inset is another effect that is used in the border style. There is another effect that is outset. You can also use the outset. And there is another effect that is none. If you use this, there will be no effect in your border. And if you use, for example, hidden effect, then there will be no effect in your table. The most commonly used in tables are solid, dashed, and dotted. Okay, so for example, if you use here dashed, okay, as you can see, now your table will have and I'm gonna set the color to blue, for example. So the color is blue. Now your table will have a blue dashed border around every cell. Okay, one of the most stylish things you can do with table borders is make them rounded. We use the CSS property border radius for this. So we need to write here, for example, I'm gonna use here border radius, understand? And I'm gonna set it to, for example, 10 px. But as you can see, there is no effect in the preview tab. So the border radius 10 px applies a curve of 10 pixels to the corners of the table. The higher the value, the more rounded the corners become. But there is a very important note. Border radius works best on the outer table border. If you also use border collapse, I mean this value, if you use this, the rounded corners may not show correctly. So for rounded borders, it is recommended to avoid using border collapse. If you remove this, for example, I'm going to remove it. Okay, so let me remove this. Then you can see the border radius at the same time. Okay, so you don't always have to apply a border to all four sides of the cell. You can apply it to the specific sides only using border top, border bottom, border left, okay, border right. So for example, if you only want a bottom border on each cell, which gives a very clean modern look, you can do this. So let me write here the style code again. I'm gonna set, for example, you need the style tag, then you are going to cover here the border, I mean the table. Okay, so if I need here the border collapse, and I'm gonna set it to collapse, understand? Now what I need to set the value for width. Okay, so width would be, for example, I'm gonna set it to 100 pixels. Okay, 100%. Now I'm gonna cover the table header and table data. Okay, and I'm going to set here, for example, border bottom. Border bottom, I'm gonna set it to 1 px solid, uh, for example, solid pink. Yeah, or if I use here solid red. Okay, and if I use here the padding would be, for example, I'm gonna set it to 8 px. Then you can see the effect. Okay, now each row has only a line at the bottom, and the left, right, and top sides have no border. So this style is very popular in modern websites and dashboards, understand? Let's take it a step further and make the header row stand out with a background color and white text. So if I use here again, we have the table, and I'm gonna set the style tag, and here we are going to cover first the table. We are going to use the border collapse property, and I'm gonna set it to collapse. Okay, now we are going to use the property width, and I'm gonna set it to 100%. Okay, now what I'm gonna cover here, the table heading and table data, and I'm gonna set it, I'm gonna use the border property, and I'm going to set it to 1 px solid hash dd. Okay, so there will be, for example, let me write here. Okay, now I'm gonna set the padding. So padding would be, for example, 10 px, and I'm gonna write here the text align would be left. Okay, so what I'm gonna cover next, I'm gonna cover the table heading, and I'm gonna set the background color. So the background color would be, for example, I'm gonna set it to 4, like we have used earlier, CAF 50. Okay, and here I'm gonna use the color would be white. So in this way, here we are giving the I mean table heading elements a green background and white text. Okay, the border on cells is a soft light gray, as we have used the color hash DDD, I mean 6 times D. So this gives a very professional and polished look. Okay, while we are here, I also want to mention padding because it works hand in hand with borders. Padding is the space between the cell content and the cell border. Without padding, your text will be squished right against the border lines. So you need to write here, for example, I'm gonna cover another property and I'm gonna set it to, for example, th. If you don't use this, let me write here. Here we are using the padding, and if I set it to, for example, 12 px, then we are going to use the 15 px. Okay, you can check the effect. So 12 px is the top and bottom padding, and 15 px is the left and right padding. So this gives your cells some breathing room and makes the table much easier to read. Understand? Okay, now let me show you a complete polished HTML table with all the border styles we have learned today. Okay, so what we need, first of all, we need the doc type HTML. Then we need to open up the HTML document. Okay, we need the head tag, and in the head tag we need the style tag. And I'm gonna cover the first table. I'm gonna set the border collapse property to collapse. Okay, now what I need, I'm gonna use the width property and I'm gonna set it to 60%. Okay, now I'm gonna use the margin property and I'm going to set it to 30 px auto. Okay, now what I'm gonna cover next, I'm gonna cover the table heading and table data. Okay, I'm gonna use the border as the property and I'm going to set it to 1 px solid hash, for example, c c c and so I have set it to this color, and I'm gonna use the padding property for table heading and table data, and I'm going to set it to 12 px and 15 px. Okay, what I need here, another property text align, and I'm going to use it to, let me write here text align, and I'm gonna set it to left. Okay, so next I'm gonna cover the table heading. Okay, and here I'm gonna use the background color, and the background color would be, for example, hash 4 CAF50. As you can see, it's let me write here CAF50. Okay, sorry, we have to use here 4. Here we have the green shade, and now what I need, the color, and I'm gonna set it to white. So I'm gonna use the font size property and I'm gonna set it to 16 px. Okay, so what I'm gonna cover next, I'm going to use the let me write here tr table row. Okay, and here I'm gonna use the nth child, and I'm gonna set it to even. Okay, and here I'm gonna use the background color, and the background color I'm going to set it to f2 f2 and f2. Okay, now what I need to create a hover effect. Okay, so tr table row, and I'm going to set it to hover. The background color would be, for example, I'm going to set it to, so the hover effect I have already added it. Now what I need to start the body tag. Okay, so in body tag we need the table tag, and in the table tag we need table row. First of all, we need table heading, and I'm going to use here first name, as you can see the fact in the preview tab. Then we need the last name. Okay, so then we need the age. So I need to start another table row. So I'm gonna write the data for John. Okay, so John Doe, and I'm gonna set the age to 25. Okay, so I need to start another table row, and I'm gonna set the data for Jane Smith. Jane, and I'm gonna set the data for, as you can see, Jane Smith, and the age would be right here, the age would be 30. Okay, now let me write the data for For example, I need to start another row and I'm gonna write here the data for Peter Parker. Okay, so Peter, and here what I need, TD and Peter Parker. Okay, and I'm gonna set the age to 22. Understand? So let me walk you through the extra CSS here. As you can see, in this way, let me show you. We have set the margin to 30 px. Understand? And we set it to auto. Centers the table horizontally on the page. As you can see, our table is in the center on the page. Okay, so if you set this 30 px auto, it will centers the table horizontally on the page. Then what we used tr nth child even. Okay, it targets every even numbered row and gives it a light gray background. This is called a zebra stripped table, and it makes large tables much easier to read. Then we use the hover effect. Okay, tr hover changes the background color when you hover your mouse. Okay, as you can see, when you hover your mouse over a row, this gives an interactive feel to your table. Okay, so let me quickly summarize everything we covered today. So we covered basic border. We used the border property 1px solid black on the table. Then we covered the table heading and table data. Then we used the collapsed, I mean the border collapse, and we set it to collapse to remove the double borders. And we have also used the different colors in our table. Then we used zebra stripping and hover effect, and we have also set the padding. So, and that is everything you need to know about HTML table borders. You now have complete knowledge of how to style your tables professionally using CSS. Okay, so if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future tutorials. Drop a comment below if you have any questions. I read every single comment. See you in the next video. Take care and happy coding.